Welcome to Introduction to Bioengineering at Stanford University. Just a short video. What is our class about? Students completing the course will have a working understanding for how to approach the systematic engineering of living systems to benefit all people in the planet. By systematic engineering, we mean a general purpose way of thinking about biology as a technology, regardless of what application you might be interested in, such that if you gain access to this approach, no matter what you want to do in the future, you have a chance of getting underway. In slightly more detail, the goals we have for this class include the following three: to help you learn these ways of thinking about engineering living matter from the inside out, as you'll see, to empower you to explore and do bioengineering, starting with DNA. We think of this like literacy. Do you know how to read and write in English or whatever language you like? Do you know how to read and write in Python or another computer programming language? There we talk about literacy or computer literacy. Do you know how to read and write DNA? That would be bioliteracy. So we want to empower you to start to become literate with biology at the DNA level. And then third, for you to become more capable of leading discussions about bioengineering with others. Stated differently, hey, if you get an A+ in Introduction to Bioengineering, almost by definition, you should be able to introduce somebody else to bioengineering, right? So that's what we mean about becoming more capable of helping others, leading discussions about bioengineering. And not just the nerdy stuff, but the really tricky stuff, like the social and cultural and political and ethical aspects. So that's what our class is about. But it's also sort of motivated from a more basic foundation. And so I want to give you an example of how Professor Brophy and I are thinking about why our class should be organized in a particular way and how we hope to relate with you. As one example, Neil Postman was a critic, author, and educator, and he had a lot to say about education. I take what he says as provocations to help me think about what we're doing in this course. For example, how's this for drama? The basic function of education is to increase the survival prospects of the group. What should you be learning now in case an asteroid hits the Earth next year, right? Or another pandemic shows up, or who knows what's going to happen, right? That's the basic function. And this sounds strange. Has any teacher told you this is why you're coming to school in case the asteroid hits the Yucatan? Maybe not. It's like just kind of dramatic, but it's interesting to think about. Continuing on, it's one thing to survive if nothing's changing, but if the world's changing, the environment's changing, is changing quickly, then from an education perspective, it's trickier because you've got to figure out what of the existing knowledge do we need to make sure everybody keeps and learns, and then what are the old ideas we need to get rid of, and then what new things do we need to learn about? So now that brings us back to bioengineering. Bioengineering is a new and emerging field. And so education in bioengineering is going to have to figure out, how do we navigate these changes and these fundamental goals? Stated differently and more practically, bioengineering matters a lot. It already matters a lot, and it's not getting less important. It's getting way more important. Therefore, as teachers, we're with you. We're not trying to make the hardest P-sets possible. Like, they'll be challenging, but we're not like at you trying to like, oh, you're not as smart, No. We just want you to learn as much as possible because it's going to matter. The more you can learn, the better we're all going to be. And so we want to see you as people first and to help you learn as much as possible. So hopefully you just reflect on this and have a sense of how Professor Brophy and I are thinking in our own minds as we're building the course and learning together with you. I want to switch gears and end with just one comment. And this is already in service of the third goal, to help you lead others in discussion about bioengineering. And I want to be really clear up front. I'm going to say some things that might seem like they're critical, as I don't mean that. I'm just observing and trying to give you some context to help understand the uniqueness of this course, Intro to BioE at Stanford. What you see here is rankings of graduate programs in bioengineering according to a magazine, US News and World Report, from 2019, about 4 years ago. What's really interesting at first glance, I'm sure everybody can see, on the left side is bioengineering, and on the right side is biological engineering. How come they're two different rankings? And what's the difference between bioengineering and biological engineering? And does it matter? Well, it turns out that these rankings and the split of the rankings comes from the past. It's really a 20th century framework for how people were thinking about bioengineering. If you were a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer and you got a call from a doctor who needed help with a patient who needed an artificial knee, or you need to make a better x-ray machine or an MRI machine, you'd find yourself working in a clinical setting to help the health enterprise, and you'd be a bioengineer. But that's shorthand on the left for biomedical engineer, right? An existing type of engineer helping with a medical need or application. Conversely, on the right, if you were a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer or a civil engineer making a better tractor, making a better brewery, or making a better wastewater treatment plant, right? Then you're taking the skills of engineering and helping people working in manufacturing, farming, and related things. And that becomes biological engineering. Stated more abstractly, these two rankings reflect the needs of the world and existing engineering disciplines being organized into institutional programs that are doing incredibly important work. Like, this is absolutely essential for excellence in both bioengineering and biological engineering. But it's this outside-in framing that is, just like kind of, well, just say 20th century. So with love and respect, I'm going to put a big X right there. Let's go into the 21st century. This is a watercolor painted by David Goodsell. It shows the molecules comprising part of a bacterium, E. coli. What our course is about is to start with the physics of living matter, the molecules that comprise life, from the inside out. And if we can learn how to systematically engineer biology from this starting line, then when we get out into the real world, it doesn't matter what we need to do. Any sort of application can be accommodated and addressed. And so that's what we think of as 21st century bioengineering going forward into the future. We'll come back and look at these paintings, but just to give you a clue, like that green set of lines on the top left, that's the membrane dividing the cell from its inside and outside. Hidden in that is a motor for spinning around the flagella, which is the tube heading off to the left that pushes the cell through liquid. In purple and blue are ribosomes and proteins in the cytoplasm. Look at how crowded it is. In orange and yellow, you can see DNA and RNA and replication of the genome. If we can figure out how to bioengineer from the inside out with life, then everything that life can be becomes possible for bioengineers. Until next time.